Here are the top stories for today, March 15, 2022. Another hefty oil price hike greets motorists, the biggest so far for 11 consecutive weeks this year, but the Finance Department opposes the suspension of the excise tax on the commodity despite calls from various sectors. Calls for a hike in minimum wage mount as soaring oil prices are seen to push upwards the cost of living. A group, for instance, seeks a 470 peso increase in the daily wage in Metro Manila. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration suspends the deployment of Filipino workers to Ukraine as tensions in the European nation show no signs of easing amid Russia's invasion. And the Foreign Affairs Department summons China's envoy to Manila amid a Chinese Navy ship's illegal incursion in the country's waters earlier this year. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. And it's another pain in the pockets of motorists as oil price hikes are not seen to hit the brakes anytime soon. And today, a double-digit hike greeted the country, the biggest so far for its 11 straight weeks. Caltex, Clean Fuel, Flying V, PTT Philippines, Petron, Sea Oil, and Shell raised their gasoline prices by 7 pesos and 10 centavos per liter and 13 pesos and 15 centavos per liter for diesel. Caltex, Flying V, Petron, Sea Oil, and Shell also increased kerosene prices by 10 pesos and 50 centavos per liter. The Finance Department, however, remains unfazed by calls to suspend the collection of fuel excise tax. In a Laging Handa briefing, Finance Assistant Secretary Paula Alvarez says the government will lose up to 48.7 billion pesos if this happens.
Hindi po tayo sang-ayon sa pagsuspinde ng excise taxes. Kasi po, malaki po ang mawawala sa ating kaban o sa ating pera sa treasury pag ginawa po natin yan. Ang pinopropose po natin, imbis po na suspindihin natin overall, magbigay po tayo ng targeted support. Ang iniisip po natin, mas maganda na yung mga PUV at saka yung mga drivers ng jeepneys na nakarehistro sa ating Pantawid Pasada program, bibigyan na lang po natin sila ng targeted subsidy kasi po pag ganun, mas makokontrol po natin na yung ating koleksyon hindi po bumaba. Kasi nga po ngayong paglalabas natin sa pandemya, kailangan po talaga nating i-push yung ating economic growth at government spending. Kung hindi po, maapektuhan po talaga ang pagbalik natin sa ating ekonomiya bago po ang pandemya.
The Department of Energy urges the public to report fuel hoarding. DOE Visayas Director Attorney Rusmark Gamalio says Section 2H of Presidential Decree 1865 that amended Batas Pambansa 33 prohibits retail outlets from hoarding fuel before a price increase or in times of tight supply. He also adds that Presidential Decree 1865 penalizes violators with imprisonment of up to 5 years or a fine of up to 50,000 pesos or both. Gamalio encourages motorists to report fuel gas stations that refuse to fill up despite having supplies. The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, or TUCP, is pushing for a 470 peso increase in the daily minimum wage in Metro Manila. The group filed the petition yesterday saying more than 5 million minimum wage earners and their families in the region cannot cope anymore with the rising cost of living. TUC President Raymond Mendoza said the continuing fuel price hikes triggered by Russia's invasion of Ukraine will further push the prices of food and other essential items upwards. He adds the last wage hike order was issued in 2018 as the succeeding petitions were dismissed. Mendoza said there is an urgent need for the government to act on their petition as this is a race against time for the survival of millions of workers. In the Caraga region, corn farmers and fisher folk are set to receive 3,000 pesos each as fuel subsidy. Region 13 Agriculture Director Ricardo Oñate Jr. said a total of 3,802 beneficiaries will receive the one-time fuel subsidy. Of the number, 2,186 are fishermen, while 1,616 are corn farmers. Up north, farmers in the Cagayan Valley are also set to receive financial aid. The Department of Agriculture in the region says more than 4.1 million pesos financial aid will be distributed to 823 Malaweg rice farmers who are tilling less than 2 hectares of farmland. Farmers will also receive 5,000 pesos each under the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Rice Farmers Financial Assistance Program of the government. The department encourages beneficiaries to support the Plant Program Part 2 to increase farm productivity and ensure food sufficiency in the country. Presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. and running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte remain the top choice for president and vice president. Based on the latest survey results of Pulse Asia Research, Marcos solidified his lead by posting a 60% voter preference, pulling ahead of his closest rival by a 45% lead margin. The latest Pulse Asia pre-electoral national survey was conducted from February 18 to 23. Marcos got a 60% voter preference rate, followed by Vice President Leni Robredo, Mayor Isko Moreno Dumagoso, Senator Manny Pacquiao, and Senator Panfilo Lacson. For the vice presidential race, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte takes the lead with 53% voter preference, followed by Senate President Vicente Soto III, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, Dr. Willie Ong, Buhay Party List Representative Lito Atienza, Manny Lopez, Walden Bello, Carlos Serapio, and Rizalito David. Meanwhile, the unit team confirms that the Marcos will not join the presidential debate organized by the Commission on Elections. Marcos' Chief of Staff and spokesperson Attorney Vic Rodriguez said the team will stick to the on-the-ground campaigning. Still to come, provinces step up their vaccination against COVID-19 despite the decline in cases. And the Trade Department aids small businesses in Cebu through the grant of Negosyo Kits. Details ahead. Keep it here on the PNA Newsroom.
Palaban, walang kinatatakutan at may paninindigan. Ilan lamang yan sa mga ipinagmamalaki ng mga Pilipina. Ngunit hindi na bago ang katangiang yan sa ating kababaihan. Noon pa man, meron ng magigiting na babaeng handang tumindig para sa karapatan at kalayaan ng lahat.
Si Gabriela Silang na unang babaeng namuno ng revolusyon. Si Teresa Magbanua na lumaban noong panahon ng Espanyol at pinangunahan ang mga sharpshooter. At si Carmen Rosales na tinuloy ang laban ng kanyang asawa laban sa mga Hapon at sumali sa hukbalahap.
Bagamat ehemplo ang mga ito ng progresibong pag-iisip ukol sa kababaihan, lagana pa rin ang stereotypes, diskriminasyon at pang-aabuso.
Kaya naman ngayong National Women's Month, sama-sama nating ilunsad ang agenda ng kababaihan tungo sa kaunlaran. Patuloy nating isulong ang gender equality at women empowerment dahil hindi pa tapos ang tungkulin ng babae sa paggawa ng kasaysay.
The government's vaccination drive continues to get its needed boost as over 860,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccines arrived in the country on Monday night. The Pfizer-BioNTech doses were bought by the government through the World Bank. These doses will be allocated to children 12 years old and up. The Philippines has received over 237 million doses of different kinds of COVID-19 vaccines. The Department of Health, or DOH, says at least 137.4 million or 58% of the vaccines have been administered. Nearly 64 million individuals are now fully vaccinated against COVID-19, while about 10.7 million have booster shots. Vaccination is the key. This is the reminder of the local government units as they all target to ease to a lower COVID-19 alert level classification. The details from Marita Mawahe.
COVID-19 vaccination in Bicol continues as it extended the 4th national vaccination days until Friday. The Department of Health encourages unvaccinated individuals, particularly those aged 5 to 17 years old and those eligible for boosters, to get inoculated for protection against COVID-19. Dr. Monray Isaiah Mancilia of the DOH Region 5 says despite the decrease of COVID-19 cases, the region has not yet reached its target level of coverage. In Pangasinan, some 1.9 million residents or 75.20% of the eligible target population are now fully vaccinated. Pangasinan Provincial Health Office Chief Dr. Ana Maria Teresa de Guzman attributed the high vaccination rate in the province to the continuing decline in the number of COVID-19 cases. However, she said booster inoculation remains a challenge. De Guzman reiterates the need for the public to continue practicing minimum public health standards, such as wearing of face masks and physical distancing. And in Cebu City, Mayor Michael Rama urges unvaccinated teachers and parents to register and be inoculated before the start of face-to-face classes this year. Rama said that while it is legally wrong to coerce individuals to submit themselves for vaccination, getting the job is the only way to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission. He said teachers and parents should at least think of the shared responsibility as the city aims to transition to lower health and safety restrictions. DepEd Central Visayas Regional Director Salustiano Jimenez said about 7% of the public grade school teachers are still unvaccinated against COVID-19. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Marita Muaje.
Face-to-face classes have started in more parts of the country as school officials look forward to welcome back students in a more COVID-19-free environment. Stephanie Sevillano reports.
Some 156 schools in Soxargen have started holding limited face-to-face classes, with more schools expected to participate soon. DepEd Region 12 spokesperson Antonio Maganto Jr. said schools from other areas have applied to participate in the pilot run of face-to-face classes. Maganto clarified that while COVID-19 vaccination is considered before allowing limited in-person classes, DepEd will not discriminate against those who are not yet vaccinated. Almost 80% of the teachers in Soxargen received their COVID-19 vaccines. In Bataan, indigenous Aitas have started attending limited face-to-face classes at Bangal Resettlement Elementary School in Abukay Town. The school has 154 school children, 80% of whom belong to Magbukon tribe, who now attend in-school classes from kindergarten to grade 3. School officer in charge Rosalie Joy Maanyo said they are hoping that by next week classes will open for those in grades 4 to 6. She assured that while the children are happy to go back to school, they are aware of the safety protocols against COVID-19. Meanwhile, over 1,700 public and private schools in Central Luzon have been deemed ready to implement limited face-to-face classes. The Department of Education has awarded them the School Safety Assessment Tool Compliance Certificate, or SSATCC, which makes them qualified to open their doors to teachers and students. They will still wait for approval from their respective local chief executives, as well as improvement of health conditions in their area. The SSATCC is valid for 6 months and may be revoked upon violation of any minimum public health standards, or if there is a clustering of COVID-19 cases in the school. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Stephanie Sevillano.
Filipinos will be barred temporarily from going to Ukraine to work as tension between the host country and Russia continues. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration, or POEA, says the ban comes as the Foreign Affairs Department placed Ukraine under Alert Level 4. POEA Chief Bernard Olalia, meanwhile, said almost all the land-based workers have been evacuated, while those remaining are the ones married to Ukrainians. They are also arranging for the repatriation of over 200 seafarers. Meanwhile, the government is ready to assist returning OFWs to get other jobs abroad. The Department of Foreign Affairs has summoned China's envoy to Manila to explain the illegal incursions of a People's Liberation Army Navy vessel in the Sulu Sea. The DFA said Plan 792, an electronic reconnaissance ship, went to the Cuyo group of islands in Palawan and Apo Island in Mindoro without permission from January 29 to February 1. It said the Chinese ship insisted it was exercising innocent passage despite lingering in the Sulu Sea for 3 days and repeatedly intruded in Philippine waters. The DFA said Plan 792 plainly violated Philippine sovereignty with its actions. Acting Undersecretary Teresa Lazaro demanded for China to respect the Philippines' territory and maritime jurisdiction and comply with its obligations under international law, particularly UNCLOS. In our business news, the Department of Trade and Industry handed out livelihood kits to more than 400 micro, small, and medium entrepreneurs in Cebu. DTI Cebu Provincial Director Rose May Quinianola said their Pangkabuhayan sa Pagbangon at Ginhawa Program, or PPG, intends to bring aid to MSMEs affected by typhoons in the province. Entrepreneurs receive 8,000 peso worth negosyo kits. The program is set to be a post-disaster response mechanism to aid beneficiaries. Besides this, the local Negosyo Center also conducted seminars on entrepreneurial development and simple bookkeeping to help sustain their businesses. More stories from the newsroom. The Ilocos region is now insurgency-free according to the country's anti-insurgency task force. And continuing aid, a city in Metro Manila is now its 19th wave of food aid distribution. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom.
Nais mo bang bumalik at magsimula ng panibagong buhay sa inyong probinsya? May solusyon dyan. Bisitahin ang balikprobinsya.ph upang mag-apply. Pero ano nga ba ang Balik Probinsya Bagong Pag-asa program o mas kilala bilang BP2? Ang programang ito ay binuo ng gobyerno mula sa EO 114 na naglalayong matugunan ang lumulobong populasyon at pagsikip ng mga residential area sa NCR. Layunin rin ng BP2 na makapagbigay ng pantay na oportunidad sa mga Pilipinong magbabalik probinsya. Ligtas at libre kang makakabalik sa inyong probinsya sa tulong ng BP2. May kasama pang tulong pinansyal at oportunidad para makapagsimula ng pangkabuhayan. Bagong pag-asa ang hatid ng Balik Probinsya program. Kaya naman ano pang hinihintay mo? Mag-register na sa balikprobinsya.ph.
Government troops have neutralized a local terrorist group in Lanao del Sur. AFP Chief of Staff General Andres Centino came over to personally see the result of the battle. More on this from Claire Gighe.
Following the successful overrunning of the local terrorist group Daula Islamiyya in the municipality of Maging in Lanao del Sur province, Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP Chief of Staff General Andres Centino visited 103rd Infantry Brigade in Marawi City to personally see the retrieved firearms, ammunition and other war materials from the said encounter. In a held press briefing, he stressed that they are definite with the target of the military troops that responded.
As to the nature of the group, we were deliberate in our plans. We had very good intelligence, sufficient yung preparation natin. At sinisiguro na natin na yung napupuntahan ng ating tropa, yung objective ng ating operations ay talagang confined lang doon kung nasan sila.
According to Santino, there was even a delay in executing their plan as this was relayed first to him before it commenced, so that they could really assure certain information like the coordinates and the location of their target, and to not make room for any error. Now that the recovered firearms, ammunition, and other war materials can be seen, the AFP chief underscored that the combat capability of the local terrorist group will decrease, although there are still remnants. He added that if this was not stopped in the recent encounter, the enemy would have caused great trouble to the community.
The high-power firearms that we see, ito lang yung nagpapatunay o nagpapakita sa atin na the threat is real and big. No? Kung hindi natin ito na-address with the recent operations that we had, ganito ka terrifying kung hindi natin magpigilan kung sila ay pangtakot sa mga communities. You can only imagine kung gano'ng damage, potential damage ang magawa nila kung hindi natin ito na-address.
For PNA Newsroom, Claire Gigha of the Philippine Information Agency, Lanao del Sur.
The Duterte administration continues to advance its fight against insurgency in the country. With a significant portion of the new People's Army neutralized, Ilocos region is now declared to be insurgency-free by the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon Jr. said several members of the Komiteng Larangan Guerrilla South Ilocos with its former leader were neutralized last month. Esperon added that the fall of the communist rebels in the Ilocos region will open opportunities for further regional development. NTF-ELCAC spokesperson for sectoral concerns and Presidential Communications Undersecretary Lorraine Badoy said the atrocities of the Communist Party of the Philippines have been disrupting the region's tourism industry. Meanwhile, areas that have been declared peaceful and secured can welcome big tourism players and business opportunities. The National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict called out presidential candidate and Vice President Leni Robredo over her alleged pact with the CPP and PANDF. NTF-ELCAC spokesperson Lorraine Marie Badoy said Robredo should stop debunking her deal to form a coalition government with the communist movement. Badoy insisted Robredo has been endorsed by an organization identified as a terrorist group. She then challenged the presidential candidate to publicly denounce the communist movement and its atrocities. Robredo has earlier denied allegations linking her camp to communists. This came just days after another presidential bet, Senator Panfilo Lacson, tweeted about the alleged worrisome coalition government. Lacson eventually clarified that he never intended to red tag anybody. The San Juan City local government is set to distribute the 19th wave of food packs for residents affected by COVID-19 on Thursday. San Juan City Mayor Francis Zamora said claim stubs shall be delivered house to house to avoid crowding. The LGU has recorded 7 active COVID-19 cases in Green Hills, West Crame, Isabelita, Pedro Cruz, and Santa Lucia. Despite the downward trend, Zamora reminded the public to get vaccinated and maintain adherence to the minimum health protocols. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. Another hefty oil price hike greets motorists, the biggest so far for 11 consecutive weeks this year, but the Finance Department opposes the suspension of the excise tax on the commodity despite calls from various sectors. Calls for a hike in minimum wage mount as soaring oil prices are seen to push upwards the cost of living. A group, for instance, seeks a 470 peso increase in the daily wage in Metro Manila. The Philippine Overseas Employment Administration suspends the deployment of Filipino workers to Ukraine as tensions in the European nation show no signs of easing amid Russia's invasion. And the Foreign Affairs Department summons China's envoy to Manila amid a Chinese Navy ship's illegal incursion in the country's waters earlier this year. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log onto the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.